This is great. This must not be anything exciting going on outside of here that you made it all here. Hey, a couple of announcements before we dive in. Next week we are not here. We have our bonfire night. So every year we kind of have a bonfire night. Around this time, we go outside, we have a fire, we have s'mores, all that kind of good stuff. And next week is that night. So next week we're not here. We're actually at Michael's in-laws. So make sure you're checking social media, checking if you get text message updates, all that kind of stuff. We'll send it out to your parents or whoever signed up for those. We'll have the address on there. I would tell you the address now, but it wouldn't do you any good because you forget about it by the time that I'm done saying it. So that would be no worth to that. Okay, but we're going to be at the bonfire night next week. So do not show up here or you'll have to be redirected elsewhere. Okay, so that's next week, and then the week after that, we actually have trunk or treat. So that's a night where we get to serve the kids ministry and all the families and kids of our area. Okay, so we get to do that, and we get to, you are going to, in your small group, decorate and kind of come up with a theme for your trunk. If you were here last year, we did it last year too. But we're excited to kind of serve the community. We had a ton of kids, a ton of families come out last year. It was insane how many people. I had to literally run back and forth to Dollar General like 2 or 3 times to be able to get all the candy we needed. Yes, it looked exactly like that, Mac. I ran exactly like that. So we had to run back, so we're excited about another year of trunk or treat. So make sure that's the 27th. It's the Wednesday right before Halloween weekend. Cool? So that is a couple of announcements. Those 2 things are very, very important that you are aware of. We're not going to be here in the building for the next 2 weeks. Now the trunk or treat will be right outside the building in one of our parking lots, okay? So next week, not here. The week after that, we're here in the parking lots. We're not down here. Got it? Okay, put that away. I know you've got a ton of things going on. You're not going to remember any of that. That's okay. I at least told you once, right? All right, so we're going to jump right in and get into the good stuff. So last week, I was not with you, okay? I wasn't with you last week. Sorry, but I'm glad to be back. It's good to be back. It was a good vacation, but some things change when you have a kid. Ask any of the leaders here who have children. Vacations are not quite the same when you have a child anymore. So it was not as relaxing or restful as I remember vacations being, but it was still good to be away. So I'm back with you now, rested and regrouped, ready to jump into this week. We are at Wednesday, October 13th. So it's got kind of the Wednesday the 13th vibes, right? Not quite the same as Friday the 13th, but it'll work for us. Okay, Wednesday the 13th. Last week we started again through video a short series on Mark 5. Okay, Mark 5, we titled it Not Witchcraft, but Miracles. Because remember last week I told you through video that sometimes when spooky season is here and upon us, right, too often I think we lump in all the miracles that Jesus does, right? We lump in all those miracles with all the spooky things that happen like in the media or in Hollywood or the movies. We kind of lump it all together, and I think we miss the power and authority actually of what Jesus did when he was here on earth, like the actual stories. We miss those because we're thinking about all the other things in media that maybe aren't real or aren't true. So we talked about the power and authority of God over the enemy and his demons with the demon-possessed man. Okay, that was last week. We did the first half of Mark 5, the demon-possessed man. We talked all about the power and authority of Jesus over the demons and over the enemy. If you weren't here, okay, I'm going to give you just a quick rundown of the points. But if you were here, well, you're still going to need the points actually. But I would encourage you, if you were not here, go back. You can always go back on YouTube. We kind of upload to our student ministry page every week afterwards the message from the night. So if you were not here and you'd love to kind of see what we talked about last week, you can go back and you can look at that and watch the video of that from last week. But again, the points really quickly, okay? Because this is important to kind of know where we left off, because it's going to kind of direct where we went. So, demon-possessed man, the main points. Number 1, we talked about we should not be surprised to face opposition. Okay, we shouldn't be surprised when we face the enemy or opposition to what we're trying to do for Jesus. We should actually expect it. We should expect that it's going to come, right? Because we know that the demons and the devil and the enemy, they don't like what we're doing when we serve him. So we should expect it rather than be surprised by it. Number 2, which I don't know why they're all number 1 up here, but this is actually number 2. Number 2, we can't expect to defeat Satan and his demons in our own power. Remember, the demon-possessed man tried everything he could to overcome the demons that are inside of him. Didn't work. You can't overcome the enemy and the devil in your own power. That's when we need Jesus and the power that he has. But number 3, even the enemy and the demons, they have to fall and they obey God's power and authority. That's the good news, right? We can't do it on our own. But number 3 was even the enemy has to fall and obey what Jesus and God, they do, their power and authority there. Number 4, there's a right and a wrong response to the power that Jesus has, right? The wrong response, remember the people, they were scared and they said, please go away, we're scared of you, we don't know what you're going to do. Right? But actually the man said, I'm going to surrender my life, I'm going to follow you, I'm going to obey what you're telling me to do. And that's the right response to Jesus' power. And then lastly, the most important one, the hope you get from last week, if you remember what we talked about last week, sometimes God just calls us to share what he's done with us in our lives right where we are, right? Not to go across the sea or across the nation, right, to tell other things. Missions are great, but sometimes he says, hey, middle schooler, just right here, right where you are, share what God is doing in your lives, because that's a story that we get to share. All right, so that is kind of where we went off last week, because it's going to direct, again, a little bit of where we're going this week, because it feeds right off Mark 5. We're still in Mark 5, and the second portion of that to finish up the chapter here tonight with another amazing miracle of Jesus. But first, again, spooky season is upon us, right? We talked about that, so I want to hear from you. With the people around you, okay, with the people around you, really quickly, you got 60 seconds. I want you to share a couple questions, right? Adult costume parties are right around the corner, right? Child and adult costume parties are one time of the year. It's okay to dress up like something. The one time, I would say the one time a year, okay, is this coming up. So I want to hear from you. With the people around you, number 1, what's been your best ever Halloween costume you've ever worn, ever created, ever had? And then number 2, if you're going this year, if you're doing trick-or-treating or anything this year for Halloween, what are you dressing up as? Go, talk about it together.
What are you guys gonna be? I'm just doing like circle. I'm not gonna go with the top. I hated that T-Rex costume. I'm not wearing that yet. I hated it.
My best costume is like a party. It's so funny. It's like a party.
Nice.
And they had like what you gotta do?
I'm sure my wife has something really cute for myself, my wife, and my daughter, so I don't know what it is. Alright, finish your conversations. Wrap it up. Alright. I know, it was quick. I know, you timed me, I get it. Well, we're quick. We're on a time schedule here, alright? I gotta get through a lot here. Alright, so come on back. Hopefully you had fun reliving maybe some of your past Halloween years, or maybe what you're doing this year, excited about this year. We're going to dive right in though this week, because we got a lot to get through, and I don't want to miss anything this week, okay? I want to make sure we get to everything this week. So we're going to do the same thing we did last week. We're going to look at the passage, little pieces at a time. Okay, we're going to dissect a little bit from each section, and I'm going to have just a few main points to take away from that coming up for the rest of the week, okay? As anytime, if you have the YouVersion, if you have your phone, you can get on the YouVersion, you can follow along with us. It'll have the scriptures there, it'll have some of the main points there, all that kind of stuff. That's how you can find that on your phone if you pull out your phone and get the YouVersion going there. If you have your Bible though, I'd love for you to open that up. We're going to get into Mark 5 in a second, so let's dive in together. Go and open up your Bibles, Bible app, YouVersion, all that kind of stuff. We're going to start right off where we left last week in Mark 5. So Mark 5, verse 21. Okay, again, we're going to read a little bit. We're going to dissect a little bit until we make our way through this. So Mark 5:21, if you have that open, let's read together. It's titled, Jesus Raises a Dead Girl and Heals a Sick Woman. So we kind of know what's coming, right? It's very clear what's coming. We're going to read together. Verse 21, when Jesus had again crossed over by boat to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the lake. Then one of the synagogue leaders named Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. He pleaded earnestly with him, my little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed and live. So Jesus went with him. A large crowd followed and pressed around him. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had, money-wise, yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. So right away, in this first little section of the passage, right, we get introduced to the main players of this story. The main players, Jesus, of course, is the first, right? So we know Jesus is up to, we're in this story, right? We were figuring out what Jesus was doing in the last section of Mark 5. Okay, but we see him returning to the other side of the lake now. So again, if you remember last week, we said he was kind of going back and forth. Essentially what he's doing is he's going back and forth from one side of the lake to the other, just doing some awesome stuff, right? That's really what Jesus does. He just goes back and forth and does awesome things. So his popularity is constantly growing, right? He enters this area and people know kind of what he's doing, what he's known for. Again, when he enters the scene, right, there are people who want something from him. They see him, they know what he's done, and they run towards him, right? That's what happens when he enters a place, because it's popular. Now, the first man, again, the second player in this is Jairus, right? The guy named Jairus. He's given a name, right? He's a synagogue leader. So we know his name, we know what he does. There's something important about Jairus, okay? So he was given a name, we know that he was one of the rulers, and he was in charge of organizing and teaching in the synagogue. He was teaching the services. So he kind of did, what we do, what I do up here, and what people who are on the stage, like Pastor C and others do. They teach the services in the synagogue. He was a powerful man, right? Most of those people were Pharisees, again, the religious leaders of the time. Okay, so that's kind of what he did. That's why he was known, and that's why he was important. The fact that he was religious, right? This religious leader, this powerful man, Jairus, is important because he is the one that runs to Jesus, falls at his feet, and asks and begs, Lord Jesus, will you help me, right? Essentially, that's what he says. He falls at his feet and asks in sincerity, I have a real need. I need you to help me. Would you do this for me? Okay? Jairus' words are full of faith. If only you would come with me, Jesus. If only you come with me and just be in this place, you can heal my daughter. I know you can. Essentially is what he's telling him, right? If you would just come and lay hands on my daughter, I know she'll be healed. We'll talk about this more later. But literally while Jesus is walking through this area to go to Jairus' house to heal this sick girl, right, something else happens. We get introduced to this third player in the story, right? The third player is this lady, this woman who's unnamed, right? She isn't given a name, isn't given a status. She doesn't have, this is who she was, this is what she did. No, all we know about this woman is that she was bleeding. She was ill, right? She was very sick. There was an illness that was taken over her, and she had been bleeding without stopping for 12 years. Now, if you think about it, we bleed all the time, right? We get scrapes, we get boo-boos, all that kind of stuff. We get blood and it stops, right? Most of us, hopefully that's what happens to most of us when we get boo-boos. But that didn't happen with this lady, right? 12 years, she's been kind of experiencing this ongoing bleeding that's been happening. And we don't know anything about this woman, but we just know that she's been in incredible pain. She's without any money, and she's in need of desperate healing. Okay? The woman is known to be ceremonially unclean. So what this means is everyone knows that she's unclean and we need to stay away from her. Literally what she has to do when she walks into an area, okay, as not only a woman, but as a person in her condition, she has to stay, when she walks into an area, she has to make sure everyone knows, I am unclean. She literally has to stand up and say, I am unclean, so that people know not to be around her. Can you imagine that? When she walks into an area, she has to literally say, hey, I am unclean, stay away from me. That's the law. That's what needs to happen when she does that. Right? She has no rights. She's the lowest of the low. In fact, anytime, again, I just mentioned, anytime she wanted to enter a room, she had to make sure that everyone knew she was not in a clean spot, okay? So, believe it or not, we're about to get 2 miracles for the price of 1. So stay with me, strap in, because we're going to go right into it here. Because now we know the background of these people. So we're going to see what happens now as we enter the actual meat of what's going on. Okay, verse 27. Verse 27, back in this text. When she heard, again, this woman, when she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak. Because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. Immediately her bleeding stopped and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once Jesus realized that power had gone from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, who touched my clothes? You see, the people were crowding against you, the disciples answered. Like, the people are all around you. What are you asking? He said, and yet you can ask who touched me? But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. He said to her, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. This is the first miracle of the night, right? 2 miracles in 1. We got some good stuff coming up. This is the first one of the night. This unclean, cast out, diseased woman decides she's going to enter this public area. She doesn't do what she's supposed to, right? And say, I'm unclean, I'm unclean. She enters this area, And again, so probably she's going through all these people. Anybody that she's touching is known as unclean now. But she decides this is important enough that I gotta find this guy, I gotta get to this guy, and I gotta touch his cloak. It's kind of like this whole cootie thing that you guys got going on in middle school, right? Guys and girls, you got cooties going on, and you got cootie shot, you got the little thing, whatever you guys do at this point. But that's kind of what it was, right? Girls have cooties, guys have cooties. Well, in this case, this lady had a cootie, a big cootie that nobody could touch, right? Or else they had the cooties as well. But she was very, very ill, and so she said, I'm going to forget everything that's going on, all the rules, all the laws. I got to get to this guy, because if I get to this guy, he can heal me. That's what happened here. Okay, again, because Jesus is more powerful than any purity laws, instead of being made unclean when he was touched, his cloak was touched, usually that would mean he's unclean. Instead of that, Jesus was powerful enough that he said, forget about that, I'm going to actually make you clean. Rather than the other way around, I'm not going to be unclean, I'm going to make you clean in the matter. So he was touched on the cloak, makes her clean. The cool thing is that Jesus actually realizes that someone touched him, right? It's the very end of the cloak, so it could have been easy to miss, right? Someone touched my cloak, but he stops, he realizes, because he realizes that he was not just touched by someone, but he was touched by someone who realizes that if he were to be touched by Jesus, she could be healed. There was faith in this woman, and he realized that, so he stopped, he turned around and says, who touched me? I felt this physical sensation come through that someone who believes that and has faith in me that I can heal has just touched me. He feels that. He feels that. Again, one thing that Mark continues to show us as a theme in this passage is that faith and fear don't go together, right? Faith is the antidote for fear. So if you look again, the woman is afraid. She's kind of not knowing what's going to happen. She knows she's been caught at this point. She's like, what's going to happen to me? I'm afraid, but I'm going to tell you what happened, right? She falls before Jesus, tells him what she had done, and again, it testifies to the confidence that she had in him and the gratitude that she showed toward Jesus, because her faith, now catch this guys, her faith not only healed her physically, but in that same moment, when the woman was healed physically, Jesus shows that she was actually healed spiritually as well. In that moment, when she was healed physically, she was also given spiritual healing. Salvation in that moment, because of her faith in Jesus. The woman's faith in Jesus for her physical healing at the same time became the faith in him for the spiritual healing from sin. Pretty incredible stuff here. The woman healed after 12 years of suffering. That is a miracle in itself, by just touching Jesus' cloak. That's some power, that's some authority going on here, right? Supernatural stuff. We're going to finish up because the miracles aren't done. There's another one coming up. So let's finish up here. Verse 35. Verse 35. So again, this has just happened, and he's still got to get to this house, right? Because he's still on the way to Jairus' house to make this other miracle happen. So verse 35, while Jesus was still speaking, some people came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. Your daughter's dead. Oh, that hit hard, right? Your daughter is dead, they said. Why bother the teacher anymore? Now, overhearing this, what they had just said, Jesus told him, don't be afraid, just believe. Hey, your daughter might be dead, but don't be afraid, just believe. Easy enough. That's right, that's hard. But he said, don't be afraid, just believe. He did not let anyone follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the home of the synagogue leader, Jairus, Jesus saw a commotion, with people crying and wailing loudly. He went in and he said to them, why all this commotion and wailing? The child is not dead, but she's asleep. And they laughed at him, obviously, right? They laughed at him. After he put them all out, he took the child's father and mother and the disciples who were with him, and he went in where the child was. He took her by the hand and said to her, Talitha cum, which means, little girl, I say to you, get up. Immediately, the girl stood up and began to walk around. She was 12 years old. At this, they were completely astonished. He gave strict orders not to let anyone know about this and told them to give her something to eat. So here we start off with a stark contrast, right? This amazing healing had just happened, and then all of a sudden we hear, oh, the girl's dead, right? There's death and there's life in the same context, in the same talk. Jesus had just healed and given new life to this woman, and then he hears that this little girl he's headed to heal and to save is actually already dead. Yikes. Again, he gives this command, don't fear, right? No fear, do not be afraid, only believe. Easier said than done, right? In the face of death, Jairus is supposed to just believe and have faith. Finally, they get to the house, right? This is going to be hard. They finally get to the house, a number of different things happen. Okay, I want you to catch these. First and foremost, Jesus says the girl is just sleeping. Now, I want to make everyone very aware. The girl was definitely not just sleeping, right? Okay, well, he wasn't just saying that to make a joke. She was not just sleeping. She was dead. Okay, she was dead. But Jesus said this, again, not to be funny or not to be, what is he saying? He wasn't making a joke, but he was showing that, again, from Jesus' viewpoint, death is but sleeping. Death is but just a nap. Because he's more powerful than that. He can make sure that that is not the case. So he does that. And again, another cool point that I want to see is only the people who were witnessing this miracle it wasn't for everyone, right? It was for a select few that he decided to bring in with him. The unbelieving crowd was only going to be a distraction to what was going on. Again, Jesus touches a dead person, making him unclean, but instead of being unclean, he heals and he makes clean the person who's going to be unclean. 2 times in one day he does this. But like before, Jesus overcomes uncleanliness and brings the girl back to life. The girl starts getting up and just starts walking around. A 12-year-old girl, most of you, some of you in this room are 12 years old, right? You're young. And you're 12 years old, and this is kind of what you are like. The girl just gets up and starts walking. Obviously, the people are amazed. You would think that amazement would be, like, okay, this guy is for real. Like, I believe in this guy, right? That actually wasn't the case. Some believed, but some were puzzled, and that's the second miracle. 2 miracles in the span of an hour. There's something interesting as we finish the story and kind of transition the takeaways here. Something truly interesting to me is how different these 2 people were. The 2 people that were healed, right? We're going to talk about Jairus real quick, and we're going to talk about the woman. Jairus, he was a parent, obviously, right? He had a kid. He was a parent. This woman was so unclean, the disease that she had made her, she could not be a parent, right? Totally different. Jairus, a man of privilege. He was named. He was given a title. He was important. The woman, she was a nobody. She wasn't given a name. She wasn't given any kind of title or anything. She was the lowest of lows. He was a religious leader over here. She had been cast out by religion. You can't be here. You're unclean because of her illness. He was wealthy. She had nothing. She spent it all trying to get healed, and it didn't work. He approached Jesus with a formal request. Will you please come heal my daughter? She pushed her way forward and definitely did not ask for permission, did she? So they're totally different, right? But they couldn't be more different, but yet they seem to be connected. Not just because they're in proximity in the Bible, but because I think they're connected in a different way too. And I want to see that because, again, you see their stories, they're connected in a cool way. And I want you to see this. Again, in that way, the woman had been suffering for 12 years. Jairus' daughter, she was 12 years old. Okay? A small, minor detail maybe, but I think there's something more important than that. 12 years old and 12 years suffering. In very different ways, both showed incredible faith in Jesus. Right? Very incredible ways. Both physically and literally, they both fell at Jesus' feet. They literally fell and said, I need a miracle out of you. Both experienced God's salvation through healing through Jesus. Not just physical, but spiritual healing in those moments. And then both the woman and the girl, through death, were unclean, but Jesus pushed his way through the uncleanness, the laws, the rules, and he broke the laws to be able to reach them and to help them. Their stories are connected in a cool way. It shows that it doesn't matter who you are, God's healing can reach you and change your life. So to close, I want to share 4 thoughts that I'm taking away from this passage and I hope that you can too. 4 thoughts. Number 1, miracles happen when we fall at the feet of Jesus. Miracles happen when we fall at the feet of Jesus. In this passage, both Jairus and the unclean woman literally, physically fall at the feet of Jesus in desperation, in total surrender, saying, I need a miracle out of you. In last week's story, that's exactly what happened with the demon-possessed man, right? He fell at Jesus' feet. I need a miracle out of you. Miracles seem to happen. It just seems to happen when we leave our feet and we fall at the feet of Jesus instead. So I ask you, when's the last time you've been at the feet of Jesus looking for a miracle? When's the last time you were in such a need, a desperation, you said, I just need you so much, I gotta fall on my knees and at your feet and ask you for this miracle. Miracles happen when we fall at the feet of Jesus. Number 2, faith is the antidote for fear. Do not fear, only believe, he said, right? It's so hard. Do not fear, only believe, is what Jesus tells Jairus. Just like when you get sick or poisoned or a virus that you look around for the antidote, right? What's going to help heal? What's going to help overcome what might be that has you down? The antidote, that thing for fear, is faith. When you have faith, the fear, it helps us overcome that fear, right? When you take on faith, it helps us overcome the fear we might be experiencing or facing. Take the antidote and take in faith. Number 3, The physical touch wasn't what healed the unclean woman. The actual legitimate touch was not what healed the woman. It was her faith. Jesus' presence in that room with the deceased girl wasn't actually what healed the girl. It was Jairus' faith. It could be very easy to say, well, it was the actual physical touch of the cloak, the fact that Jesus walked into the house and was there, that had to happen in order for it to be healed. In reality, I think Jesus could have healed both without the touch, without going to the home, but it was the faith that these people had in Jesus. It was the faith of the woman when she said, if I could just touch his cloak, I would be healed. It was the faith of Jairus. Come just lay your hands on my daughter. If you would just do that, I know that she could be healed. It was that healed the woman. And that healed the girl. Not necessarily the physical anything. And the fourth takeaway, which is very, very important. I want you, if you miss everything else, if you miss anything else I say, take on to this one. Take hold of this one. Number 4, sometimes our circumstances require desperate requests. Sometimes our circumstances require desperate action. Right? Jairus came with a desperate request. He said, I need you. If you would just come, would you please do this for me? I'm requesting this from you. God acknowledged that, and he answered his request, didn't he? He healed the girl. He came with a request. The unclean woman, she came with a desperate action. She was like, I can't just request this. I'm in no place to do that. I need to just go and act. I need to be proactive in this. Touching of Jesus' cloak. So Jesus acknowledged and answered this action too. What about your current circumstances or situations? What might they be requiring of you? Maybe a desperate request. Maybe you need to fall at the feet of Jesus and say, I have a desperate request. I need your help in this. Maybe it's a desperate action. What is it for you? When the circumstances you're in, what do you need? A desperate request at the feet of Jesus? Or a desperate action? So again, another plot line right out of the next Hollywood blockbuster, right? It doesn't seem right. Hollywood or real, but this is real. Again, we talked about remembering in this season, in this series, but also in this spooky season, remembering in the midst of all the scary, all the creepy, all the freaky that goes around, don't forget about the power of Jesus and the authority that he has over all of it. Over all of it. And what is it for you? What do you have to do in your circumstance? It's a desperate request or desperate action. As the band comes up, I'm going to go ahead and pray. And remember, again, in this season, it's not the witchcraft, it's the miracles of what Jesus did that makes him power and the authority that he has over all things. Let's pray. God, thank you so much for this evening, this night that we've had together, for the story, for Mark and just his recapping of the amazing miracles that your son did when he was here on earth. We're so thankful for that and the reminder, but also the challenge that we have because of it. Help us to live in the miracle, to remember that you are powerful, your authority is beyond all other things. God, help us to leave from this place and have a renewed faith, a renewed excitement about who you are and what you're doing in our lives.